I bet everyone on the internet saw these two contradictory pro-peace arguments at some point. The first argument is that Russia is so strong that there's no point of stopping it. It would take Ukraine no matter what. The second argument is that Russia is so weak that it will not invade other countries. So no need to stop it. So Putin is like Schrodinger's cat, strong and weak at the same time. No way to stop him, and no need to worry about him at the same time. Some people say, well, both can be true. They can be strong enough to conquer Ukraine, but not strong enough to conquer any other country, no matter how small. So are you telling me you know the exact cutoff point of Russia's military capability? Exactly. Like you know exactly where they will stop, no more, no less. How is it possible? You read some prophecy or what? If you really believe Putin's capability is at the level of barely conquering Ukraine, that exactly tells us that it can go either way. It also tells us that international alliances can make a big difference. What I want to talk about today is that war by definition is always uncertain. I talked about this legendary article before. It's the foundational piece in game theory modeling of war. Required reading for every international relations student. If it was up to me, I would assign it to high school kids as well. It's just enlightening in so many ways. But one thing I learned from it was that if the result of potential war was certain, there wouldn't be a war at all. That's not an argument of the paper, but more like a premise, a starting point of the argument. Because it's just too obvious. Think about it. Who would fight a war with zero chance of winning? Why bother? You think all those Ukrainian generals and officers and spies are just so uninformed and they just risk their life every goddamn day for something that has no chance at all? Zero. Of course, there's a chance to win for both sides. That's why they're both trying. The final result will be determined by new information that hasn't been revealed to the world, and not even revealed to the combatants themselves. So you can't predict it, period. The Ukrainians and the surrounding Eastern European countries are playing this extremely high-stakes life and death game with a huge, insatiable empire that's been expanding for 500 years. So people in these countries are way more informed and way more meticulous about Russia than a random American internet kid. So if you claim you know the result better than they do, you're basically operating like a fortune teller. A lot of content creators have the same business model as fortune tellers. You will have a boy. And then if the customer ends up having a girl a few months later, they're not going to come back and ask for a refund. But if they end up having a boy, they'll be like, whoa, that fortune teller is good. I'm going to recommend her to my friend. The business model of fortune tellers is that people tend to forget their wrong predictions and then get impressed with their accidentally right predictions. That's what a lot of influencers are doing. Remember, John Mearsheimer predicted in 2022 that the full-scale invasion wouldn't even happen. Obviously, he was wrong, but people still worship him. Oh, actually, in some occasions, he said it would happen, and then in some occasions, he said it wouldn't. So he basically touched all the bases. So he would never be wrong. That's also a typical fortune teller technique. They just throw you a bunch of predictions, and some of them are bound to be right. So the bottom line is that war, once started, already implies that there was uncertainty. Exactly because of that uncertainty, a lot of future actions can steer the direction of a war. And in the Ukraine case, any policy made by the EU and the US can slightly move the needle to one side or another. And it's stupid to claim that policy choices are meaningless because the result is fixed. No, it's not. Not only every policy can affect the result, every online speech, like this one I'm doing, can affect the political climate and therefore indirectly affect the result. The end result for Russia can range all the way from getting pushed back to the original border to invading more countries after taking Ukraine. Of course, it can also stop anywhere in between. So how exactly the war ends will depend on information that we don't yet have, including the foreign policy of the United States that has yet to be made. So those who pretend they know the result of the war are essentially helping Russia win the war because their predictions make it easier for the US administration to shirk their duty. Actually, I think maybe that's the intention. Maybe they understand all this logic and they make those predictions anyway because they want Russia to win. They have some kind of aesthetic preference for Putin's AI muscle or something. I don't know. So if you don't want Putin to win, you should recognize the uncertainty of war and push your country's foreign policy toward defeating him.